So Alex the Critic did a video responding to my recent commentary on The Rageaholic, and I had more than a couple of issues with it, so naturally I decided to cover it. I should note that Alex has covered me twice before, by the way, so I imagine at least some of my audience is wondering why I never covered those videos on me, and the answer is simple. Although I didn't like them, they weren't bad in a way that compelled me to make a commentary. This video, however, is, hence why I am currently making one. So, let's begin!
He's blowing it all out of proportion? Oh no, someone blowing something out of proportion in a video game so they can rant about it for comedic effect. Golly gee willikers, I hope nobody makes an entire fucking YouTube genre like that. In 2004. You should know all about 2004, seeing as that's where your politics flash froze.
Okay, first off, this tweet doesn't actually see Angry Joe saying that this is being blown out of proportion and is more him making fun of the idea of complaining about something being woke in the first place by sarcastically suggesting a review show that rates things based on how woke they are.
Ephraim, the punchline to Angry Joe's joke is that Az is blowing something out of proportion.
Then why did Angry Joe say it while quote tweeting Dan Vasc and not Az? Oh, but I'm nitpicking. This point is actually fairly decent, admittedly. I assumed there was a bigger difference than there actually was from what Razorfist described and from what I described, and that's a mistake on my part. Hey, I make those sometimes. And this also reveals the issue with the AVGN comparison more generally, because even ignoring the fact that, yeah, some of these people might not like the AVGN and the angry video game style of reviewing more generally, which is perfectly possible.
Perfectly possible, but not relevant in the slightest. Why? Because disliking how someone is expressing a criticism does not refute the criticism being expressed.
But that was completely irrelevant to the point at hand. Razorfist was defending Az's rant on the basis that it was similar to what the AVGN does. However, that defense only works if somebody already likes the AVGN style of content. If they don't, they could agree with Az and still dislike his rant. Because, as you said, presentation doesn't affect the point being made in of itself. However, I never conflated the two. You're just assuming I did for the sake of this argument. The comparison falls apart due to the AVGN complaining about problems that most people agree actually exist.
Is that really the standard we want to set for the validity of Razorfist's comparison? Whether or not the majority of people agree that the problem Az was ranting about in a comedically angry fashion is a problem? Because there was once a time where the majority of Americans thought that black people were better off as slaves. So by this logic, if Az went on an angry rant denouncing slavery, Razorfist would be wrong to defend him by pointing out that angry political commentators have existed for centuries because the majority of people disagree with the position that slavery is wrong.
Yeah, if Razorfist were to defend that hypothetical rant because it's similar to a different political rant that people agreed with, that would be bad reasoning. I'm not even saying that I disagree with Az's rant in this portion of the commentary. All I'm doing is declaring Razorfist's comparison between Az and the AVGN faulty.
Also, how are you so sure that the majority of people disagreed with what Az said? The dude gained 10,000 subscribers over the course of the controversy, and the video he made on the matter has a relatively positive like-to-dislike ratio.
You say while showing a video where we can't see the number of dislikes, meaning we have no idea what the like-to-dislike ratio was. Also, like-to-dislike ratios on individual YouTube videos aren't a very good way of determining what opinions are popular and unpopular. The average YouTube video has a like to dislike ratio of 9-1, and if we're judging by that standard, Az's video actually has a worse like to dislike ratio than the typical YouTube video, making it less well-liked than average, I should note. Given this is equal to about 84% likes, at least according to the results I got when I used my add-on, which lets me see how many dislikes a video has. And only 4% of videos have more dislikes than likes. And these include videos that disagree with Az, by the way. Communist Creeper's video criticizing Az, for example, has a perfect like-to-dislike ratio. However, both Az's opinion and Creeper's opinion can't be the popular one at the same time, given they both directly contradict each other, as seen by the fact that Creeper's video quite literally exists to argue against Az's. And he's far from the only one to do so, I should note. Vosh did a video criticizing Az that also got a pretty damn good like-to-dislike ratio, as did Xanderhall.
That same video is littered with comments expressing solidarity with Az that have received hundreds of upvotes.
So is Vosh's. I'll even read you a few. I'm not trans, and when presented with a pronoun choice, I click the one I was born with or that I'm role-playing as. Just one click and you never have to deal with it again and move on. If that single action is triggering to these people, I can't help but wonder if they are a little unsure of what to select. It's not surprising that the type of people that used to make fun of SJWs are actually just unironically always upset about the tiniest changes in media, because that's kind of what they have always been. It must suck being a conservative because you can never just enjoy stuff. Again, Alex, if this is the metric you're using to judge if opinions are popular or not, you find all sorts of contradictory views being popular. Either society as a whole just has this massive case of cognitive dissonance, or there's something fundamentally wrong with your metric.
Comments that I will now be flashing on the screen for you in a comedic montage.
Okay, I'm not going to be showing the entirety of the montage, however, I decided to do a little bit of math, and, well, Alex greatly overestimated exactly how many people were supporting Az. You see, Alex shows a total of 50 comments, assuming my counting was correct. Of them, I counted 2, with more than 200 likes. So at most, 4% of the comments Alex showed could back up the notion that hundreds of people supported Az, making me wonder what exactly the point of putting up the other 96% of the comments even was. However, even ignoring all of that, none of this backs up Alex's point because he hasn't given us anything to really compare these numbers to. In the 1972 presidential election, 29,170,383 people voted for George McGovern. However, not only did McGovern lose, but with over 60% of the electorate voting for incumbent President Richard Nixon. This is considered one of the biggest landslides in presidential history because that only made up 37.5% of the total electorate. And this was in spite of Jorgen von Strangle telling Timmy Turner not to interfere with the election of President McGovern.
Absolutely not! Your meddling in this era is finished! After speaking with my funky 70s counterpart, we have decided that you are forbidden from ever returning to March of 1972! However, you may feel free to muck around with every other month of this year, as long as you don't interfere with the election of President McGovern.
You can't just look at the large number and use that as evidence of something being a popular opinion. You have to compare it to the amount of people who disagree. And Alex does not do that at any point in this video. And this is especially the case given the metric Alex used in the first place, which was the amount of people who liked Az's video. However, that's not really the best metric when it comes to a clip that's been shown in various other videos, or one that has gone viral and been seen and memed all across the internet, because that is inherently a rather small sample regarding the amount of people who actually watched that rant. Going back to Vosh's video on this topic, he didn't even watch Az's rant through the YouTube video Alex showed, instead watching it after it had been posted by Hassan on Twitter. However, Vosh's dislike for the rant would not show up in the like to dislike statistics Alex showed. Nor would the dislike of anybody who saw the rant either through Hassan's Twitter or through it being shown on Vosh's channel, but then didn't go over to Az's channel to give the video a dislike. Basic logic dictates that the people most likely to have seen Az's video on Az's channel are Az's fan base. And given the statistics we already established, they are more likely to enjoy the video and give it a like than not by an overwhelming margin. You guys know that really infamous Pauline Kael misquote from after the 1972 presidential election? There are different versions of it, but it usually goes something like, "I can't believe Nixon won. Nobody I know voted for him." That's what this reminds me of. Alex is essentially saying that the majority of people must have agreed with Az because the majority of people who rated the video when watched on Az's channel gave it a thumbs up. But that's a massive assumption for all the reasons I just established. The point being, the anger, although hyperbolized, at the very least feels justified.
Right. Just like how those of us who were on Az's side felt that his hyperbolized anger towards the preferred pronouns choice in Starfield's character creator was justified.
But not the person who Razorfist was attempting to argue against through using the AVGN as a point of comparison. Razorfist's point basically comes down to Az's rant being okay because people who agreed with it felt the hyperbolic ranting was entertaining. However, he's saying so in response to people who are criticizing the rant because they disagreed with it. He's not actually addressing the point. Remember, hyperbole is defined as extravagant exaggerations. However, in order for you to exaggerate those feelings, you have to have them in the first place. And if your underlying point is moronic, then your rant is going to be moronic.
So why is Az's argument moronic? Are you ever going to explain why you feel that way, Ephraim? Because we're almost halfway through your video, and I have yet to receive an explanation for why you think Az is wrong.
Okay, Alex does this a couple of times, asking why I think Az's rant is stupid, as if I need to explain that. However, the video's not on Az. It's me criticizing Razorfist's criticism of Az's critics. If I wanted to criticize Az specifically, I would have just covered his original rant. However, I did not do so because I wanted to further the conversation. My disagreement with Az is essentially the same disagreement all of his critics had, that it was a cartoonishly small game feature and he was getting upset about it because he, for no reason, associates the mere act of allowing players to choose a non-binary character if they would like with some political statement. However, what would the video really gain from me stopping and explaining that? Especially given you could assume that's my belief on the basis that I was choosing my words in such a way that made it clear that I agreed with the people Razorfist was criticizing.
Also, I love how Ephraim said,
however, in order for you to exaggerate those feelings, you have to have them in the first place.
Because it implies that Az is a grifter who doesn't actually believe any of the things he says, and is just trying to farm views and subscriptions from outraged viewers.
How? I'm saying he exaggerated how he felt. Therefore implying I believe if he went on this loud hyperbolic rant about a topic, he was actually expressing his opinion on it with added exaggeration. What? I genuinely do not get how you got from point A to point B here, Alex. You're going to look less like James Rolfe and more like, to continue with the angry reviewing comparison, that really infamous clip of the irate gamer trying to get the red gem in Aladdin.
Just how the hell did they expect me to jump this far? Well, maybe if I get a nice running start I can do it. Alright, here we go. Oh, come on! Now I've got to waste my time climbing back up the platforms, avoid getting hit by enemies, and dodge their stupid arrows. Boy, what the hell was I thinking? There's no way I can reach that. But maybe if I tried jumping from the higher platform. Alright, let's try this. You son of a bitch! I don't believe this! Look how close I was! Ugh, somebody call 911, because I was robbed.
You know that clip that was uniformly made fun of because you can get that gem incredibly easily with the blanket? Which Chris had, by the way?
You son of a bitch! I don't believe this! Look how close I was! Boy, what the hell was I thinking? There's no way I can reach that.
Okay, I agree that the irate gamer is a retard, but how does him being wrong about this issue make Az wrong about this completely different issue?
I never said it did. All I was doing was drawing a comparison between how most people reacted to that clip of the irate gamer and how those who disagreed with Az reacted to his rant in order to make a point about Razorfist's AVGN comparison. I was explaining why those who disagree reacted the way they did. I wasn't even inherently saying I disagreed with it personally. However, the Rageaholic does have a response to that. You see, other people don't think that's the case, apparently.
Wait, so are you conceding that there are people out there who think Az had a point?
When did I deny that in the first place? Sure, I said a few things that might imply I believe those who agreed with Az were in the minority. However, obviously, I understood some people agreed with him. I'm covering one of those people in the video you're commentating on.
Because I legit have no idea what that sentence is supposed to mean. Maybe I'll figure out what Ephraim's point is when he responds to the next bit of Razorfist's video. So let's continue.
All I was doing was segueing into the next argument of Razor's that I wanted to cover, specifically his point about hypocrisy, through saying that I don't think it's a big deal. However, he would respond to that by pointing out that other people on the opposite side of the extremes do also think it's a big deal. Hence why I say others disagree.
But I agree, it is no big deal. And if you don't believe me, suggest the pronouns be removed. I guarantee within moments your Twitter mentions will be stacked to the ceiling with strangers eager to inform you precisely why it would be no big fucking deal.
You see, I don't even get what the point is supposed to be here. Well, if you said that, others would disagree. Okay, why should I give a shit?
It's not just that people will disagree with you, it's that you'll get unwarranted hatred for suggesting that pronouns be removed from games like Starfield, and you'll run the risk of being deplatformed over your opinion. That is what Razorfist points out later on in this very clip.
It's such a small deal that when an impossibly based Battletech fan modded the 2018 PC game to remove the silly-ass penis pronouns from the game, it was permanently fucking banned from the Mod Nexus website. But remember, folks, it's no big fucking deal. And to prove it, they'll deplatform you.
The reason why any of this matters is because I thought that preferred pronouns weren't that big of a deal. So why is any of this shit happening?
Because sometimes people are wrong on both extremes. I don't know what else to tell you here, Alex. Yeah, if somebody is treating pronouns as such a big deal, they need to deplatform modders who attempt to change the game so they're not included. I also think that is incredibly silly. But that doesn't debunk the idea that they're not that big of a deal. All it does is mean other people believe the same wrong things and have also done silly things because they believe something incorrect. Are these people rational?
Well, I'm about a good chunk of the way through your commentary, so I can confidently say that the answer to that question is no.
You know, I like this point because Alex unintentionally agrees with me. Remember, I'm saying the people Razor is mentioning are irrational and therefore should not be taken seriously. Alex is agreeing with that. So, Alex, I have to ask, why is Az's point rational if irrational people agree with a certain aspect of it, but take it to the opposite extreme?
It's such a small deal that when an impossibly based Battletech fan modded the 2018 PC game to remove the silly-ass penis pronouns from the game, it was permanently fucking banned from the Mod Nexus website. But remember, folks, it's no big fucking deal. And to prove it, they'll deplatform you.
Yeah, and those people are also idiotic in my opinion. I don't get your fucking point. I just don't.
So Ephraim acknowledges that the people who claim that the preferred pronouns option in Starfield is, quote, no big deal, are acting in ways that betray that claim.
I never conceded that. All I did was agree with Razorfist that deplatforming people for saying they aren't a big deal while arguing for their removal was irrational.
And even agrees that their deplatforming of dissenters is idiotic, and yet he still doesn't understand what Razorfist's point is? Alright, here is an explanation of Razorfist's point that even a 5-year-old can grasp. Starfield having a preferred pronouns option in its character creator is a big deal because modders are getting deplatformed for trying to post mods that remove the option, and commentators are being attacked for criticizing it. If this wasn't that big of a deal, then neither of those things would be happening. Get the picture now, moron?
No, because that doesn't even slightly follow. If other people are treating it as a big deal and you agree those people are irrational to do so, that means you don't believe it to be a big deal. Therefore, it isn't, and the people who think it is are wrong. And if people are acting in ways that are incongruent with that position, it doesn't make the position any more correct. It just makes those people's premise incorrect.
It seemed both avowed lefties and fence-sitting skepticunts alike all decided to form a douchebag drum circle to shit on this guy. The Act Ma'am, some hack guy, Pris Gay Run. I didn't bother checking his Twitter feed, but I'm sure Review Tech was firing off with all 5 chins. If they haven't been remotely relevant since the Sarkeesian witch hunt of Aught 15, chances are they were going full mask off on a dude for having the gall to record a funny fucking rant. You remember funny, right, fellas? It's what your index finger smells like after VidCon.
Okay, first off, whether or not that rant was funny is entirely subjective.
Not according to what you said only a few minutes ago.
And of course, just like this stream several years later, the fact that Chris is basing his anger on something that doesn't make any sense inherently makes his hyperbolized reactions just not entertaining.
Do you watch your videos before you upload them to YouTube? Because this seems like a contradiction that you would catch and then correct during the editing process.
Never mind how it was clearly implied that my statement was from the point of view of somebody who disagreed with Az. Meanwhile, Razorfist was treating him, thinking it's funny, as a reason to disagree with those who didn't like Az's rant.
And second, Hopefully now you know precisely why I called these cockholsters out on their fair weather fucking bullshit years ago. In retrospect, it's abundantly clear most of the skeptosphere on YouTube only attacked Anita in a failed Freudian attempt to distance their own brand of authoritarian collectivism from hers. Hell, most of these motherfuckers make her look moderate these days.
You know, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's impossible that actually all the YouTube skeptics did become authoritarian collectivists while I wasn't looking.
Thank God, because I did not want to spend the next hour criticizing all of the collectivist authoritarian nonsense that the amazing atheist has been spewing over the years. I've got a Halloween special to work on, god damn it.
I have no idea what the point of that interjection was. But I am going to say that I find it weird you're using as a jumping off point to discuss this, them making fun of somebody for being angry at non-binary gender options in a video game.
First of all, that was not Razorfist's jumping off point.
Yes, it was. He is talking about this and then segueing into a larger point about how internet skeptics are authoritarian collectivists. Therefore, he is using the first topic as a jumping off point to discuss the second.
In fact, at no point throughout that clip does Razorfist ever say, "You're not allowed to poke fun of people who are on my side, or else you're a collectivist authoritarian." Instead, he goes off on these skeptics for, quote, shitting on Az, which could mean joking about him, but could also mean criticizing him for bullshit reasons.
That's not what a jumping off point is. Razorfist was saying the internet skeptics were criticizing Az for nonsensical reasons, and then added that he felt they were all collectivist authoritarians. Therefore, he was launching off of the points about Az into his wider issues with the skeptic community. But those two things don't have to inherently be related for that to be the case. That's just not what a jumping off point is. The actual springboard was just the mention of the skeptic community, not their criticism of Az specifically. Especially given, say everything you want about non-binary gender identities or the concept of gender identity itself, it is incredibly individualistic.
I don't recall Razorfist ever saying that it wasn't.
But he did say it was being promoted by collectivist authoritarians. Therefore, it seems rather strange that collectivists would support a highly individualistic idea. It is the idea that only the individual can determine their own identity and that it can be radically different from everyone else's. Hell, it even includes the idea that two people identifying the same way can have radically different understandings of that identity and mean it in entirely different ways. What the fuck is collectivist about that?
It's not necessarily the belief itself that's collectivist, it's what's being done in promotion of the belief that's collectivist. Such as, I don't know, the deplatforming of modders who try to remove the preferred pronouns option from Starfield's character creator.
But it's not the internet skeptics who are doing that, it's entirely unrelated people. This doesn't make any sense as a justification for what Razor said. Furthermore, what exactly is authoritarian about the idea that you can identify however the fuck you want, and that said identity can mean whatever the fuck you want?
I think you should ask the women who have their athletic scholarship opportunities taken away by transgender female swimmers whether or not being able to identify however the fuck you want is authoritarian or not.
That is not even wrong. It's just utterly nonsensical. That has nothing to do with authoritarianism, and to be blunt, I am absolutely baffled that you would come to such a conclusion. Alex, I genuinely have to know what is authoritarian about that. I don't mean what's bad about that. I don't mean what's unfair about that. Those are entirely different conversations. I mean, what the fuck is authoritarian about it? How do these two concepts relate? Because I'm just not seeing it in the slightest.
You should also ask that question to all of the people that have either lost their jobs or even gotten jailed because they refuse to respect somebody's identity.
But that's not an authoritarian aspect of the ideology itself. That's just an authoritarian way it could theoretically be implemented. Augusto Pinochet engaged in authoritarianism against those who opposed capitalism when he was the leader of Chile, but that doesn't make capitalism on its own authoritarian after all.
After hours laboring in vain to write the first funny fat joke of their wasted lives, they all seem to settle on a single talking point, and what they loosely construe for an argument can be distilled to the following. What's the big deal? Pronouns are part of the English language. This video is just the same as a feminist freakout.
OMG, he made that point in a silly voice. Now I know it's wrong.
The fact that you were more concerned with how Razorfist was stating your position than if he was stating your position accurately is very telling. Because it shows me that you care more about sounding right than actually being right.
What do you mean by concerned? All I did was point out what Razorfist was doing, saying things in a silly voice to make them sound idiotic, in order to make it sound worse to the audience. Also, how do you know that's what I'm more concerned with? I never even mentioned whether or not the position was stated accurately after all because, credit to him, it actually was. Therefore, I didn't have any criticism of it. But that's not because of priorities. If anything, that's because Razorfist managed to summarize the point of the opposition correctly.
Also, don't even try to pretend that you haven't done that exact same fucking thing yourself to others.
You do not know anything about me, my views, my values, my ideals.
You
Do your
don't
research
even
next
know
time,
me.
you disingenuous fuckwit.
The video you showed a clip of is over a year old now. I could have very well changed my mind or my commentating style in the time since, so this attempt to call me a hypocrite immediately doesn't make any sense.
And just so you know, you are not the arbiter of how people deliver their criticism, nor how much anyone is allowed to levy criticism to any given product.
You are not the arbiter of how people are allowed to criticize either your videos or the critics of High Gautian Spice.
What silly voice am I using here exactly? Lobster Heroes? And I wasn't just repeating Lobster Heroes' point back to him in said voice, like how Razorfist was making the point of people who didn't like ads in a silly voice. I was taking his point and paraphrasing it while changing certain words in order to emphasize that I felt he was being hypocritical. Those are entirely different things. The interjection in question even starts with me asking him if this same logic could be used against him in order to make it clear that was the point I was making.
And just so you know, you are not the arbiter of how people deliver their criticism, nor how much anyone is allowed to levy criticism to any given product.
For that matter, couldn't this same argument be used against you? You are not the arbiter of how people are allowed to criticize either your videos or the critics of High Gautian Spice.
Neko believes Carmen's a woman. Others believe Carmen's a man, because he's a male. So, they call Carmen a he. Neko calls Carmen a she. Why do they do that? Because differing beliefs.
Respect Akumu's opinion. Another video from over a year ago, meaning I could have changed my mind or commentating style in some way since that video's release.
Now you might be wondering, Why am I bringing up the Alt-CC versus Neo-CC days? That's the past. After all, that's what everyone does when you criticize fucking Mama Doodletones.
It's because I haven't mentally matured in the slightest in the past 5 years, and therefore have a very hard time getting new information. Another video from over a year ago? Wow, Alex, you're really bad at finding new and relevant examples. I gotta be honest with you. Also, here I'm not even repeating Akumu's point back to him in a silly voice. I'm imitating him again like I did with Lobster Hero, although specifically I'm using what he said as a jumping off point for the sake of mocking him, which is different from just repeating what he said in a silly sounding tone.
Will I, an online personality, side with you and validate your opinion, or will I give you another video to type angry comments in? Am I on your side or the enemy's? And this, dear viewer, is why I hate the culture war.
It has this bad habit of making me both paranoid and condescending. And a video from over a year ago, which I put a giant fucking disown stamp over the thumbnail of to make it clear I no longer agree with the opinions I expressed in it.
Pinko pronouns, particularly those you have no option to disable in-game, aren't a feature any more than some asshole dev deciding your main character is named Humperdinck or some shit and not allowing you to change it would be a fucking feature. This isn't the addition of options, it's the excision of them.
Again, how is allowing a player to choose to play as a non-binary character if they want the same as forcing one really specific thing upon them?
That's a great question, and to answer it, let me pose a hypothetical. Say that in Starfield's character creator, one of the questions that players were made to answer regards their opinion of Adolf Hitler's policies about Jews. Now let's say that the only two answers players can give are, quote, Hitler was right to gas the Jews, and, quote, Hitler didn't gas enough Jews, if you ask me.
And the winner of the Godwin Award is Alex the Critic!
Understandably, this would make people opposed to Nazi ideology very upset. With that in mind, imagine the reaction I would get if I defended this option by saying, quote, political ideologies have existed for centuries. Even if you don't like it, you can just ignore it, because it doesn't come up anywhere else in the game, nor does it change how the game's characters treat you. Why is it so wrong for Bethesda to wanna be inclusive of the Nazis who play their video games? Video games aren't just a form of escapism for people who think like you. I think you can start to see the issue with your reasoning here.
You know, for a guy who gets onto me for not explaining every minuscule detail to my audience, you didn't actually explain why that train of thought was incorrect. You just said, imagine how people would react if I said that, with the implication being it was negative. The problem is, people will react negatively no matter what you say. There are 8 billion people on this planet after all, Alex. I imagine you can find at least one who's upset at any statement you make. Also, this has absolutely nothing to do with what I said. Remember, my point was that Razorfist's argument that allowing pronoun selection was in some way removing options didn't make any sense. You including an example of some options that most people would not like to be the only ones in the game doesn't disprove that inherently. Also, both of those are features because that's just what features are.
Oh really? A Bethesda RPG forcing a name onto your character would be a feature? Man, I wonder why they haven't implemented that in any of the Elder Scrolls or Fallout games. Could it be because that's bullshit?
No, it's because that would be a feature most of their audience would not approve of, given the inherent customization of RPGs being something a lot of fans enjoy about the genre. This would be like if I said Sonic 2 removed features from Sonic 1 because I didn't have the choice to turn off the spin dash.
This analogy doesn't even work because Sonic the Hedgehog 2 doesn't force you to continually use the spin dash in order to beat the game. Whether or not the player uses the move to their advantage is entirely up to them. In fact, I'm pretty sure there are videos on YouTube of people trying to beat the game without using the spin dash just for the fun of it.
You mean like how Starfield doesn't force you to identify as non-binary just to play the game, but gives that choice to players in case they would like to? Oh, there's also this part from the ending credits where he compares being asked to select pronouns, I guess, to Socrates drinking hemlock. I don't even have a response to that other than, I think you're being a tad overdramatic, personally.
Geez, I don't know, Ephraim. The high rate of suicide among transgender people, even the ones who receive gender-affirming care and live in a society that generally accepts their identity, would suggest that Razorfist is being appropriately dramatic.
This has been debunked numerous times, but you know what? Fine, I'll debunk it again. Alex's source for this claim is this Heritage Foundation article, which cites back to this study, which, to be very brief, doesn't actually say what Alex thinks it does. The study even specifically notes that both gender-affirming healthcare and affirming societal attitudes are beneficial to the lives of transgender people in notable ways. Of course, this doesn't even make any sense to bring up, given what's the implication supposed to be here? That having non-binary options in a video game is going to turn somebody transgender? I'm going to need a citation for that, Alex! Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts. This video was just frustrating all around. Alex really didn't understand the vast majority of points that I was making, or why I said things the way I did in my commentary. Instead, expecting me to do things in a rather specific way that just wouldn't have benefited the video, all while using utterly ridiculous logic and making some rather basic errors. Good night, and good luck.